Hey guys, it's Vandy as well, back with Craft Banger Deck Profile, so hope you guys enjoyed. Don't like, comment, subscribe, and subscribe. This time we're covering the last deck that I'm going to cover tonight before I die of heat exhaustion, and that is Dragon Empire Varga Dragres DZ Set 5. So Varga got the unexpected Rakshasa upgrade, which isn't bad, but the rest of his support is kind of iffy. So with the way to make the deck the new quote-unquote way it is, let's go ahead and see what we got here, because honestly this deck pretty much functions like a normal Varga deck, at least for me, because apparently Rakshasa has it out for me, and 3 of the 4 copies that are in this deck will either get damage checked, sent to soul, or a combination of the 2 before I even get to ride one of them. So let's get this started, shall we, and see what we got. First of today, we have our energy generator. It's our ride deck, Crest, and our ride deck, Crest, in your ride deck. Auto ride deck, when you would ride, plus a card to your Crest zone. If you win second, energy charge 3. Continues, you may have energy on beginning your ride phase, energy charge 3, then act once per turn, energy about 7, draw a card. All I'm pretty solid. This deck plays a lot like Rezio, which means I really do like how the deck interacts with the energy. You have 2 main cards you want to use the energy skill for, aka one of them being Sure over here if it would load, and the other one being Twin Pulsive Dragon. But if you end up having neither, which sometimes does happen with this deck, because apparently the deck likes to flood your hand with every other grade 3 but those 2 cards, then you can use your energy about 7 to draw a card and possibly draw into one of your most important pieces. And because it only costs 7, unless you have 9 energy, you granted won't be able to use Twin Pulsive, but still be able to use Sure and combo well off that. So let's go ahead and get this started with our units and see what we have with Heated Blade Ardart. 8-0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, auto roll 5 second, draw a card, standard starter, nothing to spell to free draw if you go second. You're going to make this any starter you want. None of the ride line really requires this, but I like running Ardart as a starter because I like running the canonical ride line units, and Ardart is the canonical starter to Varga. Moving on, we have our triggers. First, we have our trigger in Dragon Deity, King of Resurgence, Drag Veda, and I can already hear the comments, and if you weren't paying attention to the starter, you already know why this is here. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, over trigger in your deck, and Veda as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose on mutes, it gets plus movement for the turn. If it during your check activate its addition effect, would you get to choose our Vanguard to stand it? I'm pretty solid, you know, it's a free Vanguard stand, and you get a million and a draw out of it as well. You can make this whatever over you want. Most people will make it Volna or Asphoria for extra consistency, either multi-attack or just hand cards and getting crits as well, or they even make it the Dark Over trigger for consistent calling and healing. The reason why I choose to make a Drag Veda, even though I know it's absolutely stupid because it auto screws you over out of both Varga skills, is because I like running the Nation Over trigger. And Drag Veda is, in terms of skills, okay, not in terms of skills, but in terms of artwork, it is my favorite of the overs. So, as much as I know it's a bad idea to run Drag Veda in here because it can F you over, I like to run it anyways. So, one of Drag Veda. Do I know I'm stupid? Yes. Do I care? No. Moving on to normal triggers, we have 3 copies of Flare Veil Dragon, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, continues guard circle, punch Vanguards are grade 3 greater. This unit's 5,000 shield. You know, it's a 10k shield, it's a draw trigger that helps increase the hand, so it allows you to draw more important units. Ideally, it would help me get more Rakshas in hand. How it really works is it just draws more copies of every other grade 3 that isn't Rakshasa, and it forces me to draw my crits, and then I just scream eternally into my pillow because I just am not allowed to see anything but draw triggers. Now I know how Now feels every time she's forced to lose a game. But being able to draw cards is nice, and being a 10k shield to help increase guard power when your hand has a bunch of grade 3s is great as well, so I like having 3 copies of Flare Veil for that. Moving on, we have 8 crits, because if you're running a Vanguard standing focus deck, you're going to run 8 crits regardless. 4 copies of Rogue Beast and Negociator, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power, standard heal, standard crit, no better. You can really run any crit you want to make a Sunagosari because it came out in the DZ set start decks, and those start deck triggers are canonically the same triggers for the faded one, so therefore Sunagosari being a part of Triumph Dragon start deck is obviously going to be a part of Varga's deck. So 4 copies of Sunagosari, but again, any crit you want. Then we have 4 copies of Burning Flow Dragon, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto rear guard. At the end, about this unit boosted, shove it to soul, choose a good crit for the turn. You can really make this any crit you want. It doesn't have to be Burning Flow. I only make it a Burning Flow just because I like having, you know, the effect crit there. You will not most likely need this, but if you feel like you're going to run into a soul problem with your deck, go ahead and run Burning Flow as your second crit and just have 8 crit for pressure. Then we have 4 heals and Refreshing Wind Dragon Dino Breeze, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power, standing heal, and better. You can really any who you want. Again, just like Sunagosari, it was a part of the DZ set start deck, which means it's a part of Varga's deck. You can run whatever heal you want, though. You can even run the county heals, but I would rather just have the vanilla heals with the consistent 15k shield or the fluctuating 10 to 25k shield, but again, you do you. Moving on to our grade 1s, 3 copies of Battle Monk of the Raging Flame Kofu. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, Continuous rearguard or guard circle. If your vanguard's a grade 3 or greater Varga, this unit gets 5,000 power and 5k shield out on both of his turns. Okay, it's a 10k shield and a 13k booster once you hit grade 3. And while you're on grade 1 or grade 2, call its card to rearguard, bully down your opponent's units. As I said in the Raziel decks, this deck can consistently get a full board out when you're on grade 2. So essentially, rush your opponent down, beat them to high damage, and then make it so that if your opponent gets to grade 3 first, you can Varga them on turn 1, and if they didn't get to grade 3 first, make sure that if you do draw into Rakshasa, it's lethal. So all around, Kofu is nice for extra defensive power, especially if you know you're going to draw all your grade 3s. Okay, listen, this time I can't really, in Raziel I'm allowed to complain about this. In this deck, I understand I can't complain about it because I run, 7, 11, 4, 12, 13 grade 3s, so that's fair, but yeah, Kofu's here for extra guard power and extra boosting power worst case scenario, especially if you're constantly board nuking yourself with a Malworm over there, so being a 13k worst case scenario is nice to have, so 3 of. Then we have 4 copies of straight up the best, support, one of the best support cards I've ever seen come out of D, Battle Monk of Raging Flames Rokusei. Great on boost, Fat Shield, aka base, auto and puts on rear guard circle. If your vanguard's a grade 3 or greater Varga, doesn't matter what grade the opponent's at, or any other requirements for this matter, your opponent cannot intercept until the end of that turn. No CB cost, no energy cost, no discard cost, no soul cost, no nothing. As long as your vanguard's a grade 3 or greater Varga, regardless of what grade the opponent's at, intercepts are shut down for the turn. Okay, and automatically this card's already good because that allows both Vargas to board nuke the opponent's front row and essentially allow them to do nothing while you also bully them down with your front row rear guards so they can't get the extra shield out of it. But also auto rear guard, when any player's unit is retired from a front row rear guard circle in the same column as this unit during your turn, regardless if it's your unit or your opponent's unit, if your vanguard's a grade 3 or greater Varga, retire this unit, draw a card. See, the best part is it doesn't say what it has to be retired from, so if you just want to straight up call Storm Slasher Dragon, for example, and then retire that Storm Slasher Dragon to call Kofu on top of it, that would still proc Rokusei's skill because something was retired in front of it. All around, being able to end up sacking herself to draw a card and replace herself, and if you combine it with something like Shura, who can then bounce it to hand, allowing you to recycle the intercept nullification ability, makes Rokusei an amazing grade 1. She nullifies intercepts, she can get you hand cards, even if 95% of the time she ends up making me draw specifically Burning Flail. I don't know why specifically Burning Flail, that just happens to be the case, but being able to open up your rear guards as well, all for literally no cost at all, makes Rokusei an amazing grade 1 and an easy 4 of here. Following that, we have 4 copies of Storm Slasher Dragon, so cool moon in the background, so automatically that's reason A why he's here. Then second up, Great on Boost, 5k Shield, AK Base, auto and retire from rear guard circle by the ability of a grade 3 greater Vanguard Varga in the card name. Doesn't matter which one it is, so either way, once it gets murdered either by front row rear guard of either or back row rear guard, specifically the second skill, you get superior call this unit back to your rear guard circle as rest. It doesn't matter which rear guard circle it is, it's also in the back row, so it can be back center, it can be back left, it can be back right. Then if your Vanguard's in the Malworm state, so specifically with Draxleaf over here, Soulbots 1, stand Storm Slasher Dragon. And this is where all of your soul goes, so do not feel bad about spamming your soul bots. It will all go to Storm Slasher over here. And then change rear guard. If your Vanguard's in the Malworm state, this unit gets 5,000 power after multiple turns. Okay, upsides, it's a 13k booster once you get to a Malworm. On the downsides, this card essentially does nothing once it gets to Malworm. But being able to call itself in the early game, and say for example you go second and your opponent's at grade 1, just early game rush your opponent down, attack the Vanguard with an AK, and as long as Storm Slasher consistently stays alive, you can keep it in the front row while you build your board, and then when you get to grade 3, swing with Varga, murder your board in the front row after of course you swing with your rear guards, and then Storm Slasher just come back for free so you can keep recycling your board as needed. All around, Storm Slasher is a very solid grade 1 and make sure that you will always have a unit on your board regardless, and once you get in the Malworm state, it is technically a 2-in-1 booster, which makes it a very nice grade 1 to have in this deck, and it can always rearrange the position because again, once it dies, it can be spawned anywhere in the back row, which means great for that turn it's stuck in the back row, but on the next turn you can just move it forward if you put it in the rear guard circles, or you can put it in the middle rear guard circle. Either way, up to you, and it makes Storm Slasher a very versatile and really decent grade 1, so it's a good 4 for me. Following that, we have our PG and Guardian Monk of the Raging Flames Monju. Great on boost is 0, so it's K base continues Sentinel. You have 4 Sentinels in deck and also put on guard circle. Choose what means it cannot be hit on the battle if your hand has 2 or more cards in it. Choose a card from your hand, guard is standard PG, nothing to specify about it. Basically, that means if this is only one of the cards in your hand placed on guard circle, you don't have to discard. It's great because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game. Spam the ever living. Okay, don't spam this unless you absolutely have to. AK, unless you're like me in that one game against Raziel Vita and you specifically open with 3 of your 4 copies of Rokusei for some reason. But otherwise, spam down both Storm Dragon and Kofu, and then when your opponent eventually counterattacks you from all-in aggroing them, throw down Moju, give them the middle finger because you don't have to discard one thanks to his skill, and you are good to go. All-in Moju makes really good for counterattack play, especially when your opponent tries to throw back at you after you've already pushed them to high damage, especially because they know going to the next turn when you divine skill, even if you don't kill them, you're going to have a lot of hand cards, so they kind of have to try to kill you then and there. You can throw down Moju to make sure that you are safe, making a very solid PG. You could run Twin Buckler Dragon or Sparkle Rejector Dragon. They have the exact same skill of Manju, but I like to have Manju because he came out close to the time of Varga Dragres release, meaning he's a 4 for me. Moving on to Crossguard, one in the deck, one of in the right deck, none in the main deck of Varga Dragon. Great on boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto and upon by Boulder Axe Dragon, calls card to rearguard circle and soul charge 1. Okay, cool, he replaces himself and he gets you a free soul, and then continues to rearguard during turn. If your Vanguards are grade 3 or greater Varga, get 2000 power. Okay, 10k. It's not bad as a 10k booster, a 10k swinger, which is nice when you're on grade 3 and your opponent's on grade 2. Not only that, but being able to call itself down when you're on grade 2, again, considering the fact that you want to rush your opponent as early as possible, being able to make up your board pretty easily in case you run into the situation where you only have grade 3s and triggers, being able to just attack your opponent down is nice to have. So obviously Blazembar is a one of in the riot deck, none in the main deck, you know, because you don't really need an extra 2k when two of your things either add 5k and the other one nullifies intercept. So yeah, he's stuck on the riot deck, but he is still a good riot deck grade 1 for the aggro. Moving on to grade 2s, 4 copies of Drag Rid Shura. This card is incredible. It's weird. You had more cards with CB cost in them, and somehow the deck becomes less CB reliant. I forgot what the last deck I did this was, but at some point in time, I think it was in DZ, or it may have not been DZ, it may have been like towards the tail end of D, but there was a deck that was really CB heavy. I shoved in more cards that cost CB, and actually got rid of a countercharger in the deck, and it somehow got less CB heavy. It doesn't make sense mathematically, but whatever. Either way, Shura, great turn stuff, 5k shield, 10k base, auto rearguard when she attacks into anything. By energy blasting 2, this unit gets 5,000 power for the battle, so 15k. Then jump to one of your rearguards, a different card name from this unit, and it gets auto when it's retired from guard circle or from rearguard circle, put your hand till end of turn. So, you know, you give her skill to Rokusei, Rokusei dies from her skill, you draw a card, and then Rokusei gets bounced back to your hand via Shura skill, or you give it to Boulder Axe, and Boulder Axe dies, you draw a card, and then you bounce it back. Either way, you get a draw and an extra card back to hand. Making sure the very nice grade 2. Best part is she can swing into anything. So recently, like a game that I just played, I think it was the Rezael Vita game. It was either Rezael Vita or Levidrasa, but I'm pretty sure it was Rezael Vita. When Shura attacked into a grade 2 Vanguard, because she doesn't specify what grade the opponent has to be at, you get energy bots 2, making her extra 5k. So if your opponent pulls a defensive trigger and you have just enough to hit over it with the 5k, you can afford to do so if you want, and just know that you're wasting 2 energy and you won't be able to most likely kill rearguards. It's the only thing that kill rearguards are your grade 3s. So always keep that in mind when using Shura's ability. Anyway, though, being able to recycle cards back to your hand is great, and then auto when she's retired from rearguard by the ability of a grade 3 get Vanguard Varga in the card name. If your opponent's Vanguard is also a grade 3 rearguard, CB1 calls card to rearguard circle, and she'll get tons of power for the turn. Okay, cool. She dies from either Varga ability, she automatically calls herself back, making herself a 20k, and because Varga Dragleaf only nukes the front row once and then nukes the back row after, you can essentially reset the board and leave only yourself with rearguards with Shura and, not Rokusei, but Storm Slasher backing her up, making Shura a very solid 4. She does eat into the CB a little bit, but unless your opponent specifically CB starves you, you'll always be able to use your skills, which makes sure a nice addition to the deck out of 4 copies. Then we have 2 in the main deck, 1 in the riot deck of Boulder Axe Dragon. Great turn stuff, 5k shield, 10k base, auto and wrote upon by a grade 3 card Varga in the card name, calls card to rearguard circle, and then auto rearguard when this unit attacks into a Vanguard. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 grade Varga, this unit gets 5,000 power for that battle. At the end of that battle, retire this unit, draw a card, and it's a mandatory effect. So downside is regardless of what this attacks into, once it attacks into a Vanguard, if your Vanguard's a Varga, it's going to be a 15k swing at the least, and at the end of that battle, it's going to die and you draw a card. So if you're going to deck yourself out from this, don't swing with this into Vanguard, but it's able to basically get you benefit from dying, so you don't just lose out on it via Varga's skill. It gets you hand cards, and again, it can be recycled via Shura's effect, and it can also benefit from Rokusei's shutdown intercept effect, but also if a unit in front of it's retired, if it's Boulder Axe, you can retire itself to draw a card as well. Arm Boulder Axe makes for a very nice addition to the deck. You just ride on top of it when you're at grade 3, so again, even if your whole hand was grade 3s at this point, you can at least still aggro your opponent down with Boulder Axe's ability, thanks to being able to call itself, and again, still get good hand cards back while also retiring itself in the process, so you get benefits. So 2 in the main deck, 1 in the riot deck, just to add a little bit more consistency and increase the chance that we get the hand cards. One of the best grade 2 ride deck cards I've ever seen, especially because Bushy rarely gives grade 2 ride deck actually good skills. So 2 of in main deck, 1 of in ride deck. Moving on to our grade 3s, 3 copies of a Sudere Glaive Dragon. I always like to call him just ditch fodder at this point, because to be fair with you, he has turned into ditch fodder because I'm so tempted to ditch Rakshasa for, you know, ditching, and then I remember that I'm going to damage check 2 of them at any point in the game, meaning if I ditch the one that's currently in my hand, I'm only going to draw 1 other throughout the rest of that game, so I have to be very sparing of what I do. And then obviously I don't want to ditch this because I need this as a backup plan in case I can't go into this for whatever reason, which means it's either this or this, and to be fair with you, half the time I don't have this in hand, which means Obsidiary Glaive Dragon is my discard fodder of choice, unfortunately. But anyways, grade 3 persona 13k base, continues front row rear guard circle during turn. If you do not have another front row rear guard of the same card name as unit, this unit cannot be retired by any card effect, so basically these two can no longer touch him, and he's a 23k swing. And then continues rear guard. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 grade Varga, he gets a boost. So he gets boost regardless of where he is, but if he's in the back row, he gets, you know, the boost of that, and he won't affect the one in the front row if you have a second one in the front row, because as long as you don't have another copy of him in the front row, he's still going to be that 23k as long as one's in the front row. So pretty nice that you can have two on board as long as one's in back and one's in front. They're not conflicting with each other, meaning they're going to have good numbers all around and allow you to pressure out your opponent. Again, unfortunately, with the way this deck works, at least for me, because someone only likes to show up once per game, I have to make this as my discard fodder. But if you're completely different than me and you either draw this consistently enough or you end up drawing this consistently enough, you can afford to ditch either or for ditch fodder. So 3 copies of Obsidiary Glaive Dragon for boosting and good numbers on swing to not die by either the Vargas. Falling on to something that is supposed to die via Varga, that is Twin Pulsive Dragon. Grade 3 10% 13k base at 4 copies with a beautiful moon in the background and the lightning, I don't really know what that is, spear, I guess. Auto when placed on rearguard circle. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 grade Varga, energy blast 3, so that's our energy user. Check the top 5 to 1 grade 2 card from them called a rearguard circle and shuffle your deck. It's really nice if you're playing against another rearguard nuke deck and then you kind of come back from nothing. You call Twin Pulse and then you start making a board, especially when you call Shura off this, or it's really satisfying to call Rokusei because this procs Rokusei's skill and being able to shut down airsoft from a top 5 call. Following that, auto wins retire from rearguard by the ability of grade 3 grade Vanguard Varga on the card name. If your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 guard as well, choose their Vanguards, get 5,000 power for the turn. If your front row happens to contain Obsidiary Glaive Dragon and Shura, and you are currently sitting on Rakshasa, you can just use Rakshas's ability, board nuke your back row, and while you won't keep that 5k for, you know, the current attacking battle, you'll get that 5k at the end of the battle, and you'll still be able to stand Shura. I mean, you can stand Shura regardless of where you end up on the board, but you get my point. Like, you can attack with a little bit more consistency in terms of power, and still get the benefit out of it. All around, compared to, you know, OG Varga, who only kills front row. All around, Twin Pulsive works really well with both Vargas, being able to increase their power by, you know, 5k, adding an extra 5k drop to it, but also being able to get you rear guards via Energy Blast 3, and just like Nobia from Res.io, if you can't tell I did Nobia's, or not Nobia's, I did Res.io's deck profile right before this, being able to just work regardless of where it's placed from, meaning it can call itself via this skill and then keep going as long, well actually it can't because it has to choose a grade 3 or less, but if you have another copy in hand, you can just keep doing it as long as you have energy. Making Twist Pulsive is a nice card for 4, allowing you to get rear guards and get good numbers to Vanguard. Following that, we have this. I know I said I hated it when it was first revealed because I did not like this card. I felt like it was really underwhelming, and apparently the card heard me, and it now only shows up. I mean, to be fair, all 4 copies end up out of deck, but only one of them ends up in hand. If I'm lucky, maybe 2. The other 2 will either end up in damage zone or soul, and if they end up in damage zone, they're typically right to, like, back to each other, and that is Unparalleled Drag Sleep, Varga Dragres Rakshasa. Grade 3. Twin Drive, Persona Ride, 13k base, Malworm, auto when placed by writing from a unit with Varga and the different card name from this unit, or a unit that is already in the Malworm state. Until end of this fight, this unit is in the Malworm state, and if Persona Ride was not activated by this ability, or activated by writing, activate Persona Ride. Okay, here's the important thing to take away from this. Do not put this in the ride deck because it's not in the Malworm state. So if you draw a second copy of this, you're only going to get the Persona Ride and it will not enter the Malworm state because the unit that it rode from was not in the Malworm state. Following that is not a different named Varga. So do not put this in the ride deck, especially because this ability does not activate if it's not in the Malworm state, which means by default this ability doesn't activate because it does not proc from the over. Moving on to its 2 abilities, Auto Vanguard, once per turn when this unit is in the Malworm state attacks into a Vanguard, retire the entire front row, again, Obsidiary Glaive Dragon, Twin Impulsive, Shura, literally your entire board of restanding rear guards if they die, give this unit 10,000 power for the battle, or for the turn. Okay, free rear guard murder, 10,000 power, that is a direct upgrade of Varga's old skill. And then CB1 at the end of that battle, board nuke the back row. So this thing's just a board nuke for 1 CB. Stand this and it loses 2 drives. So I like the difference between this Varga and this Varga in the sense of regardless, this will be a 23k swing that murders the front row. And then say, for example, you did draw the over, because that was the one like main thing with Varga, where even though it does keep the twin drive, like it mostly keeps the same stuff, like you still kill the rear guard, you still give the 10k, but the difference is, this is if you pay the cost, you will mandatorily stand at the end of the battle, and you'll lose 2 drives for the turn. So even if you saw the over and this stood during its first drive check, you would still lose the 2 drives, meaning you essentially just paid 1 CB for nothing. In this one, one's case, if you did see the over, even though you wouldn't be able to use this skill because you've already lost the once per turn because you activated this ability, meaning you can't use this ability again, even if you're only using the second half of it. Which means essentially you can't do the stand because, again, it's not procced off by the over since it has to be via auto abilities. At least you don't have to pay the CB, meaning not only do you keep on CB resources, but you still get to keep your twin drive. So at least with Rakshasa, the over trigger is still relatively useful as long as, you know, it's not after this attack. Well, honestly, yeah, regardless, as long as it's... Actually, yeah, if you stack the over, you're pretty much fine. So either way, though, being able to counterblast and stand after the battle to see what your drive check is going to be and see if it's worth wasting the resource on it is nice to have the option for. And then Divine Skill, Auto Vanguard, at the end about this unit attacked, if this unit was stood by this unit's original auto ability during this turn, specifically its own, so if it inherited an auto ability, say for example, like you wear this on top of Dauntless for some reason, that would proc it. Counterblast 1, stand this unit, and it gets +2 drives for the turn. Okay, it's essentially Varga's Divine Skill but buffed. As much as I'm disappointed that this card wasn't something completely new like I was hoping it would be from an Evolved Varga, they did a really good job in buffing it. They made the one weakness of the skill better because not only did they made it board nuke possible, but in the fact that you had to pay CB and you would lose drives regardless if you saw the over or not, now you don't have to waste it on that. And if you do see the over, well, it just means you can't use the Divine Skill that turn. But if you already used the Divine Skill that turn, well, you're not losing any drive checks out of it this time. And then the Divine Skill is no longer restricted to the opponent being at 4 damage, or them being at grade 3 or greater. I mean, most likely they're not. They're going to be at grade 3 or greater since you have to ride this thing on top of, you know, another Varga to be able to actually get the Malworm state so you could restand via its own skill. But it's nice that it doesn't require it. So all around, Rakshasa is a very solid grade 3. It's a nice updated version of Varga. Kills rear guards for free, makes itself a 23k for free, possibly allows you to stand for only 1 CB, board nukes, and gets extra drive checks pretty much for free as well. So it's a nice 4 in the main deck, if only he would show up more often for me. And then move on to our last card in the deck, 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck, because again, this card most of the time will just show up in damage zone, so I have to have some level of backup plan in case I can't draw this, and that is Faded, 1 of Unparalleled. Varga Dragres. Okay, I'm not gonna lie though, I do actually like this one compared to the new one. I have slowly began to like Rakshasa a little more, but I don't know why. I think it's just the artwork that always calls me back, because I feel so much cooler persona riding Varga Dragres than just Malworm persona riding Varga Dragres Rakshasa, even though Rakshasa is just inherently better than OG. Anyways, OG, Auto Vanguard, once per turn. Once you attacks into the Vanguard circle, CB1, you retire all of you and your opponent's front or rear guards. This unit gets 10,000 power for the turn. At the end of the battle, stand this unit loses 2 drives. So again, they do the same thing in terms of they both kill front or rear guards. This gets 10,000 power, so it's 23k. The only difference is regardless at the end of the battle, it will stand regardless because you're already paying the CB1 to get the rest of that ability and it'll lose 2 drives. So if you see the over in that drive check, it doesn't matter if you stand, you're going to lose the drive checks. With Rakshasa over here, at least you'll get to keep the drive checks because you won't have to be forced to pay the CB since it happens at the end of the battle. Following the second skill, the Divine Skill, Auto Vanguard, and then about this unit attached into a grade 3 or grade unit if your opponent's damage zone has 4 or more cards in it, and this unit has attacked 2 or more times this turn, so it can count the over trigger's restand ability. CB1, stand this unit in, it gets +2 drives for the turn. So this is where hindsight kind of comes in. If you've been paying attention to some of my deck profiles, I have said that there was a specific point when I was playing Varga, I think it was set 4 specifically, where half the time I would swing with my first grade on the turn I could Divine Skill. I would swing with the Vanguard, and I would attack, and I would use the own attack ability, and the first drive check would be an over. And it happened consistently enough to where I realized I didn't have to use this skill, because this ability doesn't require that it be restood by its own ability like Rakshasa over here. Meaning if you know your luck and you know you're going to consistently flip over the over in your first drive check and you're going to Divine Skill that turn, don't waste the CB and then just attack, see the over, get the million, restand, attack, don't use the skill, and then Divine Skill because you've attacked 2 or more if the opponent's at 4 or more damage, stand it, now you got 4 drives, you attack again, and then you CB1 during that battle, and then it will restand at the end of that one, and it'll lose 2 drives. But point is, you'll get what? 2 from the first one, 2 from the over, so 4, then the second attack will give you another 4, so 8, so you'll get 10 hand cards. If you think that's gambling on like odds of luck, again I say, if you know you're lucky, you know you're going to sack the over, like there was one guy when Drajul first came out that said his opponent always sacked the over after he would use Drajul. If you know your luck is like that where that will always happen, it's not really gambling on it. Says every gambler ever, but like, you get my point. Like, if it happens consistently, you know what's going to happen, take advantage of it. So 2 of in the main deck of Varga Dragres so I have extra persona abilities, but also because you can afford to risk it if you know what's going to happen. Like I knew it was going to always flip the over, so I just stopped using the skill on the first drive check, and lo and behold, flip the over. So yeah, the moral of the story, if you know something's going to happen, go for it. Either way though, that is it for this one. I hope all of you enjoyed. This deck is actually very fun to play. You know, it's nice board nuking both players' fields, getting the constant restands, early game rushing your opponent with little to no repercussions to it. Ryokosei straight up shutting down every form of guarding power physically possible, and then seeing two dragons with swords just casually go at it and try to kill your opponent in one go with double restands. So I'm going to this one here. I hope all of you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us for Twitch. I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to send up your vanguards.